Hello, my name is Matt. Welcome to Unbearable 73. And we got the most unbearable episode of them all of this time. Unfortunately, it's another episode of Rings of Prime versus Tolkien's Legendarium for me. Thankfully, while there's the usual caveat that there are many, many small things that can be brought up in this video, I'm only going to highlight the major points. And only 4 of them this time. Unfortunately, 3 of them are pretty abysmal. Let's get right into it. The first slide up was when I marked the point when Galadriel says to Halbrand, and 500 men to aid your people. So let's get a map on screen so you can get a reference to what I'm talking about. This is a pretty cool site. I'll link to it below. It's artamaps.org. It hasn't been updated since 2016, but it's a largely complete site, but it still works. In this particular case, we're going to go into the Second Age. Hopefully it'll load fast. Sometimes I'm doing this through Firefox for reasons related to OBS. So we'll let that load, and I'll go back to my talking points, and we'll see if we can get something to pop up. Because Firefox is slow as heck for this site. Now, since this occurs around the time Numenor sunk, we need to put the 5 ships and 500 men into perspective with regards to how much the show has changed from the lore. Numenor sunk in about Second Age 3200. At the time it sunk, before Arpharazon had built the Great Armament, which is meaning about Numenor was an empire based on sea power with massive armies. They had colonies on Middle-earth, and he even established several loyal satellite nations, such as the stronghold of the King's Men Umbar or that of the faithful Pelargir. Let's try reloading it and see if it'll do it. There we go. That popped up. Okay. And let's zoom in and we'll see. Make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing. Okay. It's basically based on Google Maps. I'm going to zoom in. So, in the lore, this is Numenor of the island of Elena. It's pretty dang big. And scrolling in. Excuse me, my allergies, man. So, now, Tolkien did not give like exact longitude and latitude with the location of Numenor relative to anything else, but it is basically a straight line to sail from the Grey Havens, where Numenor was, to Tolerancia down here. Okay, I'm not going to belabor the point. I was saying the Numenorians now, and also you'll see names here. For example, Arnor and Gondor did not exist at the same time Numenor did for reasons related to the fall of Numenor. The point I'm getting here, though, is this is kind of a compound map of the Second Age that we clicked on. The realm of Umbar here was founded by the Numenorians, particularly as the King's Men. Pelargir is over here, and there were other little kingdoms along the coast area that the Numenorians had founded. Okay, so they had colonies in Middle Earth and so forth. Now, at the time of the sinking, just before, meaning about say 100 years, say a little before it, Sauron had begun to establish control of Middle-earth, in particular the kingdoms of men who were not under Numenorean authority or closely allied with or protected by elves or dwarves. They were being conquered and coming up under Sauron's rule. The elves instead have been dwindling as more and more of the Noldor returned to Aman, and more of the other elven kindreds who had not made the original journey from the islands back to North left with them. They had also begun to call Sauron the Lord of Men. After Arpharazon usurped the crown from his cousin Tamiriel and forced her to marry him, he decided that now the kings would have full control of the Empire of Numenor. He wanted to begin asserting their power over the whole world. Arpharazon himself wanted to be the Lord of all men and desired to make a showing against Sauron to prove that. He led a great fleet to Umbar and led a humongous army. Then he led that army to Mordor, which might as well have been called a fortified nation due to geography or geology, whatever way you want to think of it, where Sauron had millions of orcs and a backing from millions of men from areas east and north of Mordor that he effective rule of. The army was so massive that Sauron's forces fled in fear, though Sauron himself was barely bothered. However, Sauron was full of guile and cunning and decided to turn this disadvantage into advantage. He turned to Arpharazon, and the rest of those events are for a later video, but basically it led to Numenor being sunk by Eru. Right. So, sending 500 men is in stark contrast to Numenor, who could field armies that could make the entire army of Mordor, which had been conquering Middle-earth, run away in fear, obviously, for Sauron. Let's move on. So, we move to the slide. Recounted Elrond Perid Hell. First, once again, referring to the elven language of Sindarin. It doesn't exist in this show. Paradal means half elven in Sindarin. The show uses Quenya for all the elves, which means Sindarin doesn't exist, and so the honorific of Paradal should be different. There's enough, Tolkien created enough of the language of Quenya, if they're really serious about Quenya being the only language for all the elves, that they could have done it, but they basically need to, I don't know what they need to do, because I can't understand them anymore. Second, elves don't have last names. They either have honorifics based on their task, or on accomplishment, or on their lineage, or where they live. Elrond Paradal literally translates Elrond the half-elf, similar to his brother who would have been Elros the half-elf. Arwen and Domio translates as Arwen the Evenstar because she represents the last of Finwë's line, who would be born in Middle-earth among the elves, and she carried a gem called the Elisar, okay? An elf stone, one of the two of them. Either Arwen would go to the Undying Lands, marry there, and her children would be elves there, or she would marry Aragorn, make the choice of the half-elven, and she had children with mortal men. Thus, she was the Evenstar, the setting star of the elves in Middle-earth. Okay. Third, so that basically what I'm saying is Elrond Paradal is his title. Elrond half-elven. Okay, that's like saying, Queen Elizabeth. Third, Gil-galad uses the term here either as a last name or a pejorative. If using a last name, the tone would indicate Gil-galad asserting some sort of disciplinarian type of thing. If using a pejorative, that's even worse because that means that the morons who wrote this thing think that Paradal is an insult, rather than a high honor granted by the Valar. Let's move on, onward and downward. With which some claim was hidden the last of the lost Silmarils. And this is where the episode began to make my brain hurt. Okay, they literally have Galadriel lecture the audience for like 17 minutes about the show's versions of the elves going to war in the First Age, a version which makes no mention of Ungoliant, Fëanor, the Silmarils, the Oath of Fëanor, the first kinslaying, the journey back by the Noldor, and so on. Then they drop in another sort of short exposition, where the brief story of Fëanor and the Silmarils, and now this garbage. If the next scene that I was going to be talking about in this video did not exist, this would be the most offensive affront to Tolkien's Legendarium so far. This particular thing I'm about to talk about. Now, let's put this in perspective. What I'm doing with Galadriel and spending 20 minutes on exposition, possibly boring you. I'm just going to go through a series of events, cutting some stuff out for brevity and simplicity, and so forth. And Fëanor, okay. In the years of the trees, that was before the two trees were destroyed, Fëanor crafted the Silmarils, which captured the light of the two trees. The Valar were impressed. They had enhanced the Silmarils to make them virtually indestructible, and Varda, the wife of Manwë, hallowed them such that no one who was evil can touch them. Okay? It would burn them. It would basically burn them up. Okay? After the two trees were killed by Melkor and Ungoliant, which that's where Galadriel mentioned the two trees being killed, the Valar asked Fëanor for the Silmarils so they could unmake them and then use the light to restore the two trees. Fëanor refuses. So the Valar are like, okay, well, we have plan B. We'll make the sun and the moon. Okay? Melkor and Ungoliant raid Fëanor's home, which is the city where the Noldor Elves had made their kingdom there, where only Fëanor's father, the High King of the Noldor Elves, is there to steal the Silmarils and every other jewel they have because Ungoliant wants to eat them. Melkor kills Finwë. Ungoliant eats all the jewels Noldor had crafted and wants to eat the Silmarils. Melkor gains the desire for the Silmarils and keeps them. Fëanor returns, finding his father dead and the Silmarils stolen. He basically loses it, and Fëanor already had a troubled life and mental state because of what happened with his mother. So Fëanor and his sons swear the Oath of Fëanor to the Valar, and Eru himself making it irrevocable. Basically, it translates to we're gonna go to war with anyone until we get the Silmarils back, and we're gonna go to war and kill anyone who keeps them from us. Okay, they wouldn't rest until they regained the Silmarils, and wouldn't make war with anyone so in their way. That's the formal way of saying it. So the primary followers of the king of the Noldor had a first wife, which he had Fëanor, right, and then he had a second wife, which he had Fingolfin. Okay, so there are two hosts of the Noldor Elves. The Fëanor loyalists and the Fingolfin loyalists. Now, there's a division, but it's not so much between Fëanor and Fingolfin, because they're brothers and they love one another, and it's between Fëanor and Fingolfin's mother, who he doesn't. Fëanor has mother issues, to keep it put. So Fëanor and his sons lead their host first, and they go to where the Teleri, the Seaborn elves, are, and they want their ships so they can go back to Middle Earth. The Teleri say no because the Valar didn't authorize it. All the Teleri wanted was say, go get the Valar and say, yeah, we'll sell you there and go to war with you ourselves. Okay. So instead, Fëanor began fighting them. Then Fingolfin and his larger host, this is where Galadriel was, who hadn't sworn the oaths. Okay, by the way, but Fingolfin and Galadriel and all the others there, they supported the effort to get the Silmarils back from Melkor and gain revenge for their king's death. Okay, they come upon the Teleri and Fëanor's host fighting, and Fingolfin thinks, oh my god, they attacked us, and he jumps on Fëanor's side, and they basically slaughter the Teleri. This is the first kinslaying. Galadriel sees this and doesn't participate. Okay, so a group of the Noldor with Galadriel draw back. They still want to, wage war against Melkor and get the Silmarils back. So they go there. They make their own way over land in the far north to Middle Earth. Fëanor and Fingolfin's hosts take the ships and go to Middle Earth. Okay, they're there. Okay. Now, ultimately, this is all that led to all the wars in the First Age. Okay, at the end, so here's how. So, in the tale of Beren and Luthien, Beren, a human, wanted to marry Luthien, the daughter of Thingol, and the Maya Melian. And these are Aragorn's ancestors, by the way, as well as Elrond's. And so, but Thingol doesn't want the man to marry his daughter, right? And not to disrespect Beren, he thinks of like a son, but just he gives Beren an impossible test. He steals Silmaril from Morgoth's crown. Okay, Fëanor had renamed Melkor Morgoth during all this. So now this is where Galadriel's brother actually died. Okay, he aided Beren on his quest, and it's a very good. I mean, after the Lord of the Rings itself, I'd have to say that Beren and Luthien is my favorite thing Tolkien wrote. Okay, so it's an involved quest, but eventually, Finrod, Galadriel's brother, dies because Sauron had captured those on the quest for the Silmaril and was torturing him, about to kill them. But he interceded in saving Beren, and Beren escaped. And eventually, Beren and Luthien get the Silmaril from Melkor and return, and they get married. Okay, so that Silmaril stays in under King Thingol's hold in Doriath, which is protected by Melian the Maya from anyone, including the Noldor, getting in. Okay, so fast forward to the end of the First Age. Morgoth is basically winning. Okay, because he had like hundreds of millions of orcs. I can do another video if people don't believe that. I can prove it mathematically, okay? And he's just relentless, okay? He still has two Silmarils, and one is in Doriath, okay? Irindel the Mariner basically gets one of them. I'm cutting stuff out here to make it long story short. You've heard about Irindel on the show. Irindel's a human. He is in love with Elwing the elf. They want to get married, or they're married. And Irindel's like, no, man, we got to get the Valar to intercede. We're all going to die and become enslaved or whatever. So because he didn't do it for himself, he did a sacrifice. He defied the ban of the Valar on mortal men going to Valinor. The closest they can go is Toleracia, an island. Right? So he goes there, and eventually goes to the mainland and goes to the Hall of the Valar himself. And he said, I don't care what you do to me. I will accept any punishment. But you have to help your people. You have to. And so the Valar send the host of the Valar to honor, and Irindel, they give him the flying ship Vingalot, and he leads all the aerial forces of the Valar, which is basically the Eagle and some flying Maya. Okay, and blah blah blah. War happens, and at the end of the war, Morgoth is overthrown. Irindel is both rewarded and punished because some of the Valar, especially Mandos, like he's got to be killed. It's punishment. Mortal man cannot come to Valinor, but others are like, no, he's clearly. Clearly, he had to do it. Anyway, so they give Irindel, who is descended of a previous elf and human marriage, and Elwing the same choice since they were of half elven blood, mixed elven blood, the choice of the half elven, which is you can choose the fate of men or of elf, and if you choose the fate of elf, thereby that's your choice, right? And you will live and Irindel would have preferred to choose the choice of mortal man, but he loved Elwing, so he chose that fate, and he became an elf, basically, full time. And then they sent him into the sky with the Silmaril to guard it, not only guard anyone from ever coming to Arda, Earth from sky because of and so forth, but to keep the Silmaril off the ground and protected. Okay, what happened to the other two Silmarils? Two Fëanor's sons survived, Madros and Maglor. Okay, and at the end of the war, the War of Wrath, the Valar said it's over. Your oath is expired. There's no more point to this. The Silmarils are coming back to Valinor. Come back with them. We could just move on from this. But they realized they were conflicted. It's very poignant that you can hear in my voice because Tolkien's work affects me. And they said, we swore this oath to Eru. We would be forsworn and destroyed if we don't follow it. But then they're like, yeah, but what's the point of all these wars? Even if we win, we're going to lose because they'll come for us anyway. And so they said, okay, we'll just take them. We won't hurt anyone, basically. They'll hurt minimal people. So they go into Eonwe's tent. Eonwe is the Herald of Man, where he has the two Silmarils, and they steal them. And there's some sort of chase that goes on. But as they hold the Silmarils, remember, they will howl against evil people touching them. And they begin to burn Mehedros and Maglor. Okay? And so in his sort of despair, Mahadros finds sort of a fiery volcanic chasm, throws himself in the Silmaril in it. The Silmarils are indestructible, remember, and the Silmaril gets drawn into the core of the earth, and it will, as per the Silmarillion, it will reside there until the end of time. Okay, and then Maglor, again in despair because the Silmaril punishing him, goes to the ocean and throws it to the bottom of deep into the bottom of the ocean, where it will reside to the end of time. Okay, so there is no Silmaril under any tree or in the Misty Mountains. Okay. Okay. And the other thing to reference, Mithril has nothing to do with the Silmarils. Okay? I just want to state that up front. Nothing. So let's move on. Although I need to point out, because there's so much I can say. At the end of the War of Wrath, end of the First Age, the Noldor had been under the first ban of the Valar, which was they were basically punished spiritually, could not return to Valinor until basically they had sort of repented themselves, which they kind of did by waging their wars, not so much to regain Silmarils ultimately, but to defeat Morgoth. Other than the sons of Fëanor, most of the Noldor became defenders of man rather than persecutors of Morgoth. Okay, so at the end they say, okay, the ban is lifted, the punishment's lifted, you can all return to Valinor. Okay, there is zero circumstances when Gil-galad, who was there during all of this, would have seen the price of the oath and the Silmarils, and he would know that they're irretrievable. There's zero circumstances where he would get involved with trying to reclaim the Silmaril. Anyway, on to the worst for last. Well, this is part one of the worst for last. Our light is fading, and this is going to be a little disjointed because you can hear it in my voice. I'm just so burnt by this episode. And now we have it, the single greatest offense, not only the Tolkien's Legendarium, but the Tolkien himself. Now, first let me say everything that Gil-galad and Elrond and Celebrimbor say in this sequence from this slide and the next show slide is wrong. Second, let me say that it's wrong in the sense of the lore, and for this purpose of this crap show, sure, it's right for them, right? Yeah. Anyway, second, let me say everything they say goes beyond spitting on Tolkien's memory. But whoever wrote this nonsense, they wrote it after they had dug up his grave, opened his coffin, and used it as a toilet bowl. Elves and men are both humans. Human means literally to have a soul, okay? They have souls created by Eru-Yuvatar, but each has a different fate. In the Silmarillion, Eru-Yuvatar uses the flame imperishable, which is something only he possesses to create souls. Let's look directly at what it says in the Silmarillion. Right? This is from Anulindale, which is the first book of it. And this is basically when he's using the Song of Valar to create the universe. Okay? And since I have kindled you with the flame imperishable, you shall show forth your powers in adorning this theme, each with his own thoughts and devices if he will. Skipping a bit then, to Melkor among the Ainur, he had been gifted the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He had gone often alone into the void places, seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own. And it seemed to him that Yuvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient in his emptiness. Yet he found not the fire for it was within Yuvatar. Only Yuvatar can create souls, or harm them, or anything them. They're protected by the power of God. Okay. In his letters, Tolkien literally identifies that Yuvatar is a fictional version of the Judeo-Christian God. This is important to Tolkien because his Catholic faith was a part of who he was. Now, I'm not religious, but I respect people's right to be. And I respect those who live by their religious convictions faithfully, so long as they don't impose them on others, generally speaking. Okay. When he began to create his Legendarium as a young man, the Valar and Maiar were basically just other versions of the Germanic gods. However, as he grew older, he decided ultimately to make the final version of the Legendarium something compliant with his Catholic faith. This is important because of the nonsense of this El's fading storyline. Now, this crap show can do whatever it wants with its own storyline. My video is about what Rings of Prime has done versus what Tolkien put into Legendarium, so you all can know the difference, okay? Had this crap show, they could simply stop at saying the elves would die without the light, it would have been bad writing, but I wouldn't even have mentioned much of it. I would just cover it in my review. But this show went above and fucking beyond. This literally fucking happened. Our immortal souls will dwindle into nothing. As I proved, only Eru has power over souls. He made them literally imperishable, as I've shown before. So just when you think it can't get any worse, it did. This singular line by fake fucking Elrond here sums up every goddamn wrong thing with this show there is. Not only are they spitting on Tolkien's grave, they're crapping in it, and they're trying to create a product which is in total defiance to everything he wrote. This isn't an adaptation made with respect. This is a parody made with the effort to destroy. I thought I reached a point of apathy with the show, and then the episode made me angry. Just all the anger comes back, and when I do my actual review, if I can stomach it, this is just a lore thing. There's even more trash in there. I feel burnt, roasted like badly cooked meat. I'd like to give this whole fucking show the meat, ram it down so far the show chokes to death.
Well, Soft, give me the meat and give it to me raw.